Hi, and welcome back to Questions Over Coffee. I'm your host, Kevin Smith. It's good to see you again. Can I get you a cup of coffee? Today's question comes from a gentleman that I've been playing a game with on the iPad for a while. He goes by AdamMac316. His question is, isn't the Old Testament basically washed away with Jesus and his actions of peace and love to all? That is a very good question, and often somewhat misunderstood, Adam. Here's the thing. It depends on what you mean by washed away and what you mean by the Old Testament. The answer is yes, the Old Testament regulations are gone. They have been wiped out. We no longer have to do the animal sacrifices. We no longer have to keep the food list, things like that. So yes, we are freed in that regard. Jesus has fulfilled those things for us. However, consider this passage for a moment. This is Colossians chapter 2. We're going to start in verse 13 and read through verse 17, although I would recommend reading the entire chapter. Paul records, "When you were dead in your transgressions and uncircumcision of your flesh, he made you alive together with him, having forgiven us all our transgressions, having canceled out the certificate of death consisting of decrees against us, which were hostile to us, and he has taken it out of the way, having nailed it to the cross. When he had disarmed the rulers and authorities, he made a public display of them, having triumphed over them through him. Therefore, no one is to act as your judge in regard to food or drink, or in respect to a festival or a new moon or a Sabbath day, things which are a mere shadow of what is to come, but the substance belongs to Christ." So, in some regard, Adam, the answer is yes. The old decrees, the old laws that the Jews had to follow in the Old Testament, they're gone. They're no longer required. So as Christians are freed from those things. However, here's the other side of the issue, though. The Old Testament is very, very valuable and should not be tossed away with the old decrees. The Old Testament reveals to us who God is. It talks about his character. It talks about the love and the justice and the judgment he has for mankind and the things that we need to do to serve him. Consider this passage as well. This is Exodus chapter 34, and we're going to just look at verses 6 and 7. Here is how God defines himself to Moses. Then the Lord passed by in front of him and proclaimed, the Lord God, compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in loving kindness and truth, who keeps loving kindness for thousands, who forgives iniquity, transgression, and sin, yet he will by no means leave the guilty unpunished, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children and on the grandchildren to the third and fourth generations." This is still the same God that Christians serve today. His character has not changed. What we see is this character played out in the person of Jesus in the New Testament. The Old Testament should be considered. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that you get in on all the valuable questions that people have been asking. We wouldn't want you to miss any of the good questions that are coming up. Also, if you have a question, feel free to put it in the comments below so we can address the things that are needed for you to further your study and your relationship with God as well. Let me ask you a question, and please feel free to comment this as well. I want to know how much of the Old Testament do you read and do you study? How has it affected your understanding of who Jesus is? It's a great thing to consider. We'll see you next week on Questions Over Coffee. Keep pressing forward.